you know, we've been working on the farm bill, as you all know, for 4 years. And, you know, we're making some progress. It's hard to tell exactly how much progress we're making. We were able to get it out of committee last year. We got it out of committee this year in the House. The Senate, I think, will finish the amendments and pass the bill this week in the Senate. And we've been told that we potentially are going to have the bill on the floor in the House the week of the 17th of June, although we have not gotten formal notice of that from anybody in leadership, and we have not been informed under what type of a rule or what type of a scenario the bill would come up. We have indicated that we believe, and Frank Lucas and I, Frank's the chairman now, we do not disagree on anything in this bill. We are very strongly together, especially on the commodity title, conservation and so forth. So there is no daylight between he and I on this bill. But I think there's some daylight between him and some of his leadership that are not too attuned to this whole situation. So anyway, we have indicated that we think if we're going to get this done, we have to have a rule that limits amendments to 20 or 30 amendments or something. Otherwise, we'll never get this done. There'll be 500-600 amendments that take forever. They'd probably pull the bill before it ever got to a final vote. The last time in '08, when I was chairman, we, I think, considered about 25 amendments, something like that. That way you get most every issue that people want to bring up is able to be brought up under that scenario. The only thing that doesn't happen is members are not allowed to bring the same thing up 10 times in a row, you know, which some members is not good enough to just vote on something. It has to be, you have to vote on their something, even though it's the same thing as somebody else's something. So anyway, so the next, you know, point in the process is going to be, you know, whether they're going to give us floor time, give us a rule that we can live with, and then, you know, we're going to go to the floor. As I said, Frank and I are in agreement, and we are going to oppose changes to the commodity title, oppose changes to crop insurance, oppose changes to the food stamp, SNAP part of it, or any other part of the bill. Whether we'll be successful remains to be seen. I think there are potentially problems with the conservation compliance, for example. I think could be an issue, potentially the payment limitation issue. So there are some areas that you know, we're not sure where we'll end up vote-wise. There will be an attempt to undo the dairy provisions that I've worked on for the last 3 years with the dairy industry. I think we have the votes to defeat that. There'll be an attempt to eliminate the sugar program. I think we have the votes to defeat that. So we think we could hold the bill together pretty much like it came out of committee. Came out of committee 36 to 10. The question is then, if we hold everything together, whether we can get enough votes to actually pass the bill on the floor. Some of the Republicans tell me that the high watermark amongst the Republican caucus is 150 votes. That means we'd have to have 70 votes from the Democrats. I was able to get 13 of the 21 Democrats on the House committee to vote for the bill, in spite of the food stamp cuts, which some of them were concerned about, because of other things we were able to do in the bill. Whether I can do that on the floor, I think, is a much more difficult exercise. and more nuanced than a lot of these members are willing to, I think, accept. So I think there is a possibility that we may not have enough votes to pass this. We increased the food stamp reductions. I agreed to that because Mr. Lucas thought he needed the additional cuts in order to get votes from his caucus. And what was done to change the LIHEAP exemption from $10 a year to $20 a year is not a big deal in my opinion. But nobody looks at what the actual policy is. They just look at the numbers, So you could have a situation where Republicans, even though they're voting against the bill because it doesn't have enough food stamp cuts, 21 billion is not enough. For some of them, 100 billion would not be enough. I think for some of them, if you could eliminate the food stamp program altogether, and they would still vote against the bill because they don't like the commodity title, they don't like crop insurance, they don't like government, basically. So I think at some point, doing more food stamp cuts, I don't think gets you any more Republicans, because I don't think they're going to vote for it anyway. And part of the argument some Republicans are trying to make to their colleagues is, look, if you don't help us pass this bill, then there'll be no reductions in food stamps at all. And there'll be no reform of the direct payments or any other part of the farm program. And food stamps don't need reauthorization. They are permanently authorized at the level they're at, and if we don't change it, nothing, they'll go on forever. So it's kind of hard to understand the logic of them being against doing what can be done, as opposed to what would happen if nothing is done. And the other problem is that even if we pass this in the House at $20.5 billion, the Senate's not going to go along with that. And that was part of how I got Democrats to vote for the bill in the House committee was, I'd be surprised if the Senate went above $8 billion, and frankly, I'd be surprised if they went above $5 billion, given my discussions with Ms. Stabenow and with Cochran, who has said publicly that he doesn't want any cuts in food stamps at all. He wants zero. So it's kind of a quagmire, but we're hopefully going to move ahead. And if we're not able to get the votes, then if we get to the floor and we can't pass this, then I think we're done probably until the next election. And we'll end up just extending the current law for another couple years, because I don't see this happening. If we don't get it done now, I don't see it happening next year. So who knows? Maybe people will wake up and realize that we got to get this done, but we don't know for sure. We won't know until we get to the floor and we actually have a vote. And hopefully that will happen sometime in June. With that, Mr. President, do you have any other things you want me to talk about?
Do you have time for a question or two?
I do have time for a couple, 3 questions if you guys want. Anybody has any? Anybody answered all their questions? Yes?
Mike Strands with National Farmers Union. Curious if you see any particular things that would be helpful to help keep the dairy provisions intact. Where do you see pressure?
Well, if anybody understood what this was about, this would not even be a question. But as typical, most people are not going to be told the truth when the amendment is put out there that's trying to undo it. And whether they'll listen or not, that remains to be seen. But, we are changing an 80-year policy in dairy, going away from the price support system and going to a new margin insurance system. And this is a big change, and we're taking a lot of risk out of the system by doing this. The current safety net doesn't really work. And the price support is so low that it doesn't really do any good. So by letting people buy margin insurance, you're gonna allow them to, you know, probably protect 85% of their cost of production, which is a lot better than what they have now. So if we ended up in an '09 type of a situation, you know, they wouldn't get hurt near as bad as what they did. The problem is, you know, we expect about 70% of the people to sign up because it's a voluntary system. So you don't have to do it, but you know, it'll be there if you want. The problem is, what happens if this takes too much risk out of the system and we get overproduction? That's why we have this stabilization fund. So that if we, by taking the risk out of the system, we get too much milk, there's a way to rein that in, you know, by having the farmers and the people that actually benefited from the system actually pay for it. And IDFA, who represent the private processors, they hate this. Even though I gave them 80% of what they've been looking for in the last 10 years, but they love volatility. It is in their best interest to have a system where milk goes from 20-some dollars a hundredweight to $10 a hundredweight, because that's how they make money. And you look at the history, anytime the price has gone up, they raise their prices. But when the prices go down, they don't lower their prices. And that's exactly how it works, and it always has. And so they like volatility. In fact, one of their members actually told me that. They need volatility. One of them said, it's the only way we can get in the export market if we get down to $10 milk once in a while. You know. So anyway, so the Goodlatte-Scott alternative to our deal, it picks up the margin insurance, but it doesn't pick up the stabilization fund. And it actually makes the margin insurance more lucrative, you can buy higher coverage for less money. So I don't think there's any question we're going to get too much milk, and there'll be no way to stop it. And we're not going to dump the milk. You know, we're not going to, I don't think we're going to go out and dump milk down the storm sewer. So we're going to have to do something with it. And, you know, we'll probably potentially collapse the world market. And more critically, the federal government will be on the hook for this. So if we end up having a huge overproduction, the farmers will have no reason to cut back because they're insulated from the market. And the government's on the hook. So we could see a program that they claim is going to cost $400 million over 10 years, in my opinion, cost $4 or $5 billion, potentially. And, you know, that's not a smart thing. But it would drive down the price. So you'd have the federal government getting IDFA cheap milk, which is not a smart idea. You know, we went through this with corn. You know, we produced corn for 20 years below the cost of production because the government subsidized it. Otherwise, wouldn't have been able to grow corn. You know, nobody could grow corn for $1.85 a bushel. But we subsidized it so people could stay in business. What that did was create a bigger livestock industry than we would have created had we had market price for corn, you know, which we're still paying the price for here now. So anyway, if people understood what this was about, it wouldn't be a close call. I think we're going to be okay. Problem is, we got the Speaker of the House who really is engaged on this issue, and he is going to go after me big time. And, you know, it's not good to have the Speaker of the House after you. But, you know, I've done it before, and we've been through this before, and we'll survive. So. Yes?
Congressman, how do you feel about separating the SNAP portion of the Farm Bill from the Farm
I'm
Bill?
against it. I mean, we'll never get another farm bill if we do that. And we may not have another farm bill anyway. I mean, if we get this one passed, this might be the last farm bill. I had a heck of a time passing the '08 bill. And that was a piece of cake compared to what we're up against this time. So I can't imagine what it's gonna be like 5 years from now. The problem is you got hardly anybody left in rural America. You know, 80% of the people that vote in the House have no connection or no understanding of agriculture. It's a big problem. You know, these ideas, I suppose somebody will try to do this, but I don't think there's a whole lot of support for splitting them up. And it would be a bad idea, I think. Yes, sir.
How optimistic are you for the June date for the floor?
Well, I go back and forth, you know, but I'm as optimistic as I've been in the last couple of years, which is, I guess, not too optimistic, but, you know, I think at this point we have better than 50% chance of, well, probably maybe better than that of getting the bill on the floor. You know, I really don't know where these votes are at. And we have not whipped this, you know, nobody's really whipped this. And some pretty smart people on the Republican side tell me that, as I said, that 150 votes is the maximum they're gonna have. If that's the case with the level of food stamps that are in this thing, I think it's a problem. But we'll see, you know, we're gonna charge ahead and see what happens. Yes, ma'am.
Congressman, thank you for being here. You said that this potentially could be the last farm bill. Then what is on the horizon? What is the prediction from?
Well, we'll have a food stamp program, you know, which I said is permanently authorized. And we'll have a crop insurance program, which is permanently authorized. The crop insurance does not need a farm bill. It's permanently authorized. And we are moving significantly towards getting every crop and every aspect of agriculture covered by crop insurance. We're now trying to do it with dairy. You know, we're moving into livestock. You know, we're moving into specialty crops and nurseries and so forth. And that's frankly what we need. So 5 years from now, if we keep making this progress, if we get peanuts covered, cotton covered, rice covered, we move significantly on these specialty crops, we get dairy, we get, you know, the livestock grip insurance expanded, you know, at that point, you know, 5 years from now, people will say, well, you know, this is enough. This is all we need, you know. The problem with that and why we have the target price in the commodity title is that crop insurance will not protect you against a price decline, you know, for more than 1 year. And so, for example, this year, you could buy crop insurance, you know, you could buy, you know, at fairly good $6.50, $7 for corn. But if corn went to $3, next year, you know, that's all you could cover is $3. And you'd be, you know, you wouldn't buy revenue insurance at that point because it would be a loss. So people would go back to, you know, the traditional crop insurance, I would guess. So that's why we have the target price system in the bill, is that when these prices collapse, and they will, it's just a question of when, there's some kind of floor underneath them. And that's what we're trying to do with the target prices. You know, but, you know, you got people out there saying, we're in a new paradigm, we're in a new market, we got all these people coming in from China and Asia and all over that have more money and are buying more meat and better diets and so forth, and so therefore you are in a new paradigm, you're in a new market, and we're never going to have to worry about price collapse. I'm still very skeptical about that, but you've got people buying into that. And, you know, so you could end up, I could see Congress getting into a position where they think crop insurance is enough. You know, we went through the biggest drought we've had since the Depression and didn't have any significant call for an ad hoc disaster bill, which is amazing. And that shows you that crop insurance worked, you know? And that's part of why we're under attack, because around this place, if something works, then we should get rid of it, you know? I mean, you know, everybody's worried about creating jobs and the economy. The one thing that's been stellar through this whole thing has been agriculture. We've created more jobs, we've created more economic activity than anybody else in the economy, and people are trying to screw it up. You know, the same people that are clamoring that we gotta create jobs wanna take the one thing that's actually creating jobs and screw it up. You know, it makes you wonder. Whether the fact that Congress doesn't meet most of the time, doesn't do anything, is not necessarily a bad thing. So, anyway. All right, well, thank you all very much. Have a good meeting, and we'll wish us luck. We'll need it. So.